Ashrafi, and on behalf of International Women's Day Committee, Organizing Committee, I would like to salute you all and thank you for being here today. I know International Women's Day means a lot to every one of us, and thank you very much to join, to respond to our call and be here today. And I'm going to share a few minutes what I'm thinking about today, and I would like to actually represent International Women's Day today here, what I'm saying. As you know, over a decade ago, textile workers took the street for better working conditions, better pay and shorter working hours. As a result of their fight, we have now weekends. We have 8 hours of work, and we still fight for our benefits through our unions, through our organizations. But today, we see that everything that we have fought for, so hard for, is being lost, ignored, and privatized. All that we have made with our own hands is transferred to the private sectors for a modest amount. We are also expected to pay for services that serve the interests of the senior executives and the regular owners of the capital. Even land, water, and people are still referred to as objects, and objects can be traded in the marketplace. What a shame! The oppression of women is also a source of enormous profit for the world capitalist imperialist systems. The super exploitation of women in sweatshops and agriculture fields, low wages for women in general, as well as the cruel enslavement of millions of women in human trafficking and a multi-million-dollar sex industry networks protected by authorities. We make a fundamental mistake if we call on capitalist, imperialist politicians and asking them manage to do something for us. It looks like we have no share in the wealth and beauty of this land. Just look around and tell me, do you see anything that is somewhere growing, moving, but we have no share on making it? That's why we say, if women stop, the world stops. We say that's enough. Let's put our brains, our hands, and our arms together. Let's end the punishment of the elderly, children, women, workers, sex workers, the homeless, the unemployed, the disabled, the homosexuals, transgenders, and the refugees. But let's not stop there. Let's push and impose, not demand, a new system. Let's warn the jokers sitting in ministry and chambers of parliaments and military bases. They should stop fighting with us because they have not seen yet the power of furious women leaving their jobs to take to the streets. Let's make the game table upside down and end this corrupt game and build our world with a vision of freedom, equality, and social justice. Where we will take care of each each other. We must choose leaders from among ourselves. Leaders who build a new society with us. A society whose value does not depend on its bank. A world in which there is no news of war, occupation, and conquest of other human lands. A world that will end our grip on any religion. A world where the slightest discrimination and inequality on the basis of color, skin, race, gender, and sexual orientation will not be tolerated. Let's fight to emancipate women and create a new society, a society in which we raise our children in perfect peace. A society in which the fruit of our work is at our service. Let's aim at overthrowing capitalist imperialist regimes throughout the world to achieve the complete emancipation of women. The revolutionary struggles of women is a powerful force for the transformation of the entire society. Let's fight from here forward to end patriarchy, capitalism, imperialism. With such a dream, I congratulate everyone March 8, the International Women's Day, that is a remembrance day of women's struggle for realization of the world that I have tried to picture. Long live International Women's Day.
My name is Erica Grant. I am from the Nisga'a Nation. I'm honored to be here today in celebration of women across the world. I start off with acknowledging that we stand upon the traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, the stolen territory, not unceded. We didn't give it up. We didn't surrender our land, so it's stolen land of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh nations, and we thank the Coast Salish people for allowing us to be upon their land. Thank you. The song I'd like to bring to you today is actually a prayer that we often sing on Main and Hastings. We pray for the homeless, those without, and this is a song that we've been singing. It's actually adopted from a Blackfoot prayer, but we have adopted it to mean something near and dear to us.
Historically has been for and led by working class women. The folks you'll hear speaking today do so in honor of them because they help lead national struggles for liberation all over the world. We highlight their struggles because when we say, when women stop, the world stops, we mean working women. We mean the women who work in the factories, who serve your food, who sell you your clothes, who take care of the children and who clean your homes, sometimes going halfway across the world just for the chance to do that. We mobilize today in the spirit of a strike, a refusal to accept our exploitation as workers under imperialism and capitalism. And the best way to understand how imperialism works is by exposing the conditions of those who live under it. After all, it is the workers, the working women especially, who will usher in change and liberation. When I say workers, you say power! Workers! Power! Workers! Power! When I say women, you say strike! Women! Strike! Women! Strike! So we have a lot of speakers in the lineup today, so we'll just get started. My name is Danelle. I will be your MC today, and I'm a part of Gabriela BC, a local chapter of Filipino women who are fighting for liberation in our homeland. The first speaker will be Laurie from Gabriela BC.
Warm and militant greetings to all working class women and allies. Gabriela's work honors the women who toils in farms and factories, who are super exploited as cheap labor for bourgeoisie and who also bear the burden of reproductive and domestic labor. We honor them by working together across our many sectors to change the very conditions that systematically exploit us. On this year's IWWD, we want to highlight the increasing state repression of women's activism in the Philippines. On February 7th, 5 people, including 4 women in Tacloban, were arrested during the increasingly common police raids across the country against various people's organizations. It is a damning reflection of the desperation of the U.S. Duterte regime, when students learning about the economic conditions of peasants in their own communities is seen as victimization. These arrests fall under a larger and escalating national effort to red tag and target human rights defenders and activists, especially working and peasant women who have taken leadership roles in their communities. We call for the release of the Tacloban 5 and condemn nationwide efforts to criminalize activists and legal organizations. As Filipino women militantly fighting against the root causes of poverty, exploitation, and oppression, we face constant and violent state repression. The increasing militarization of the entire country under such policies puts activists and especially women under risk of harassment and violence. Those who dare speak out against the state are red tagged, labeled as terrorists, and jailed in an effort to further broaden and legitimize the persecution of dissent and people's organizing. This month, arrests have already been made against 2 members of the Gabriela Philippines Executive Committee under false charges and blatantly planted evidence. These attacks against women come days before International Women's Day. Today, we celebrate Filipino women's struggle for liberation throughout the history by joining this struggle. Our work carries forward beyond this day as we work towards a world without capitalist and imperialist exploitation in the Philippines and across the world. The criminalization of dissent is the action of a regime that is desperate to contain an ever-growing and ever-strengthening people's movement for freedom. We celebrate and rally behind the women who are criminalized for speaking truth to power. The truth of the international women's movement is that it's a workers' movement. The truth of the Filipino woman is that she is a revolutionary. The fascist and pro-imperialist state have always been tied to silence us, by keeping us indentured to housework, by exploiting us as workers and making us disappear when we speak out. From Gabriela Silang to Maria Lorena Barros, our history is a history of resistance. This one day among many where we honor this day, we honor this history. Every day we must continue to speak truth to power, no matter the consequence. Activism is not a crime. Free all political prisoners. Makibaka! Wag matakot!
There are many countries all over the world where women and other organizers are persecuted for dissent. Activism is not a crime!
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 Free all political prisoners now!
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 Our next speaker is Charlotte Cates from Sammy Dude Political Prisoner Network.
International Women's Day, on International Working Women's Day. We know that any movement for the liberation of women means a movement for the liberation of the working class. It means a movement for the liberation of indigenous people and indigenous women from settler colonialism here on this land and everywhere around the world. We know that standing for the liberation of women means standing for the liberation of all of those revolutionaries in the Philippines, those revolutionaries everywhere who are fighting imperialism, capitalism, exploitation, and oppression, and who are demanding a different world. And we know that standing for the liberation of women means confronting Zionism. It means confronting racism in all of its forms, and standing for the liberation of Palestine from the river to the sea. So there are today 5,000 Palestinian political prisoners in Israeli jails, and 44 of those are Palestinian women. 4 of them are held without charge or trial under administrative detention orders. These women are students. They are community leaders. They are sisters. They are mothers. They are workers. They are farmers. They are parliamentarians and lawyers and activists. They are journalists who tell the stories of the prisoners. They have been subjected to torture and abuse. Over 90% of Palestinian political prisoners have reported sexual violence, harassment, assault, physical attacks, and psychological torture. They include Maisa Bogosh, a Palestinian student whose parents could not recognize her when they came to see her because she had been tortured by the Israeli occupation regime. They include Khalida Jarrar, a leader of the International Women's Movement, a feminist leader around the world who is not with us today on International Women's Day because the Israeli regime, in cahoots with the United States, in cahoots with Canada, in cahoots with the European Union, and all of the imperialist powers that are deriving their wealth from the colonial exploitation around the world and from the exploitation of workers in their own countries. All of these powers are responsible for the detention of these women. And we know that these women will win their freedom because they continue to resist and strike and struggle behind bars. They organized classes. They held hunger strikes. They refuse to give up 1 inch of their freedom, and they will tear down every one of these prison walls. With Palestinian women at the head of the struggle, they will march and liberate Palestine from the river to the sea. But in order for us to be coherent and consistent in standing for the liberation of women as an international women's movement, we must stand behind them and with them and alongside them and raise our fists together to boycott Israel, to stand against Zionism, and to confront colonialism and racism everywhere, including right here on this land. From Wet'suwet'en to Palestine to the Philippines, women will stop the imperialist and colonialist war machine.
U.S. imperialists! #1 terrorists!
Occupation is a crime from Iraq to Palestine!
Occupation is a crime from Iraq to Palestine!
Now we have a cultural performance to break things up a bit. We have a lot of speakers today, but we have Sulong UBC, a student group, to perform a song for us.
We are the women from Sulong UBC, and the song we're going to be singing for you today is Babae by Levi Abba Jr. It says that our liberation, our freedom as a people is nothing without the participation of women. So enjoy.
Sinilang lakas sa sumpa ng lipunang marahas. Hindi naman ko at walang kakayahang harapin ang gusto.
Louder!
Malamutin ang mapagsamantala at pagkatao'y nihirapan nila. At inuling ikaw na nagpapal naninilay. Tayo na magkakasama, malayain ang kaisipan. Ngayon na ang panahon ng pagpapaligwas, pagsulong ng kamakahihan. Ilubos ang kalayaan kung di ka malaya. ang kasaysayan kung di ka kasama. Babae o babae, bahagi ka ng tagumpay. Sa lahat ng larangan magbay, kayo na mga kasama, magsulit palayain ang kaisipan. Ngayon na ang panahon ng pagbabalik uwas, pagsulong ng kabaihan. Nilubos ang kalayaan kung di ka malaya, tapos ang kasaysayan kung di ka kasama. Babae o babae, bahagi ka ng tagumpay. Kayo na mga kasama, magsulit palayain ang kaisipan. Ngayon na ang panahon ng pagbabalik uwas, pagsulong ng kabaihan. Nilubos ang kalayaan kung di ka malaya, tapos ang kasaysayan kung di ka kasama. Babae o babae.
Students are an integral part of any liberation movement. We need more youth, more students involved so that we cultivate a generation of people who are fighting for their rights as women and workers. Our next speaker is Laura from Bread, Roses and Hormones. Let's give it up for Laura.
Hello. Thanks to all the speakers that came before me. I can't promise to be as animated, I'm sorry, but really, really inspiring. So, my name's Laura. I'm from the Red Braid Alliance for Decolonial Socialism, where I particularly focus on the campaign Bread, Roses and Hormones, which is for working class and indigenous trans women. Bread, Roses and Hormones receives revolutionary socialist feminism as our legacy and is named after the Bread and Roses strike led by women and children and the industrial workers of the world nearly 100 years ago in New York and Philadelphia. I have 3 short points to make while I'm up here. Firstly, that neoliberalism's goal is to liberate our bosses and government for feeling responsible for our well-being. 2, that this disproportionately affects women and trans people through the destruction of our social wages. And 3, this has made struggles over community survival and reproduction the revolutionary struggle. In the words of socialist feminist Elisa Del Rey, 40 years of austerity politics has worked to liberate capital from the reproduction of labor power. In response, we have seen the development of international women's strike movements, the most advanced of which are led by women in the global south, protesting increased violence against poverty, and poverty amongst women. Austerity hits women and trans people the hardest because we are paid less, shoulder unpaid gendered work in the home and the community, and for these reasons rely on social provisions like child care, elderly care, affordable transit, and food programs to survive. For Indigenous and racialized women and trans people, this has the added pain of dispossession from their lands and being forced to live in diaspora away from family, kin, and traditional support networks. But this negligence also presents us with our terrain of struggle. There are 2 ways that the working class in Canada can respond to the pressure of decades of austerity attacks on union power and the evaporation of the social wage. One is to turn, as middle class and some working people in the US, Brazil, and Europe have, to a racist, male supremacist politics that increases the policing of and assault on the poor, and which recriminalizes the autonomy of women's bodies and the lives of trans and queer people. Shame. The other, and this is our destiny, is to demand the impossible and begin the construction of communities no longer beholden to the government or the interests of capital, where we support each other through solidarity and autonomous activity. In this regard, Bread, Roses and Hormones pledges to make revolutionary politics relevant to Indigenous and working class women and trans people. We propose to build relationships so together we can lead the charge of establishing and holding political power that challenges the bourgeois and colonial appropriation of our resistance. To do this, we believe we need to create what we call adversarial forms of reproduction, ways of organizing community survival and our relationships to each other that build back our social wage, but not as a second New Deal that relies on government funding, but as a project of dual power on our way to destroying Canada and its ruling class. The IWW textile workers used to chant bread and roses for all. Today, I would like to add and hormones too on the end, because a working class women's liberation struggle also includes working class trans women and non-binary people. So when I say bread and roses for all, I want the crowd to scream back, and hormones too! Bread and roses for all! And hormones too! Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Shore Ganbari. Give it up for Shore!
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shore, and I bring a solidarity message from campaign to defend people's struggle in Iran. Today we are celebrating International Women's Day around the world, while in some countries like Iran, women are not allowed to do this officially and publicly. For the past 40 years, Iranians have lived under the absolute misogynist state, misogynic ideology and oppression of the woman in fundamental characteristic and the ideological base of the capitalism regime of Islamic Republic of Iran. The world system of capitalism is in deep crisis. Women are among the worst affected. Thus, they are on the front lines of the struggle against all miseries created by the system, and for survival, decent income, jobs, and basic human rights. They do this from the situation of the multiple oppression, working more for less pay, having less access to the wealth of the planet, and taking more than their share of family responsibility. The world system is and has always been male-dominated system, which reduces opportunities and securities for the woman, as well as marginalizing those who don't fit within the narrow gender boundaries. Therefore, the human rights environment for women in Iran continues to be characteristic in inequality, exclusion, many barriers. To accessing basic rights in areas such as employment, marriage, divorce, free travel, joining social activities, and so on and so on. But regardless of the status expressed and defined by the Sharia law and by dominating traditional in Iran, the real female image contradicted that an official Islamic regime. Women have earned a higher status in the eyes of the society than the status the state and governing law assigned to them. This we owe to the very strong and vibrant women resistance. Iranian women are using everything, everyday resistance to challenge the rules that attempt to control their personal, private, and also social lives at home, at work, on the street, in the university, and all over the country. They are increasingly defying the challenging restrictive law and fatwa like hijab. They are fighting the existence of the sexual apartheid, being in power and in control of their lives in all aspects. We salute women who risk their lives and are in the jail now in Iran. We ask for their immediate and unconditional release. We hope one day we can celebrate International Women's Day in Iran without any risk. Long live International Women's Day, long live international solidarity. Campaign to defend people's struggle in Iran. Thank you.
Long live international solidarity! Long live international solidarity!
Our next speaker is Ari Maestro with Migrante BC. Let's give it up for Ari.
I look at the crowd before me and I see the power of women and I feel the power of women and I know you see and feel it too. progressive grassroots organization of Filipino migrants and immigrants. All of us here stand on the shoulders of women who more than 100 years ago marched on the streets, organized themselves, rallied their union brothers and sisters, went on strikes, mounted barricades, and proclaimed the International Women's Day in 1911, in which we now celebrate in many, many countries around the world. As women gain victories, we use these to inspire us and fight even more. But 100 years later, women across borders, races, classes, identities continue to struggle against capitalism, against imperialism that has created wars and occupations, displacement, poverty and hunger, militarization, labor exploitation, and other evils. We know that the casualties in these wars, displacement, and militarization are mainly women and children. For the thousands of workers who leave the Philippines every day to leave to work overseas, the labor export program is the glaring example of the imperialist scheme to extract super profits from the cheap labor of workers. In the Philippines, more than the majority of them are women workers. Their calls for jobs, livelihood, land and rights ring very loud and clear. In the Philippines, because of the time difference, they have celebrated International Women's Day and they shout, sahod, trabaho, lupa at karapatan ipaglaban. 100 years later, women around the world continue to fight on all fronts and on all forms of struggle, in picket lines, street demonstrations, factories and farms, pipeline lands where they encroach on their indigenous communities, schools, hotels, countrysides, and even inside prisons. Women continue to uphold the militant tradition of women whose place is in the struggle, because our liberation is tied with our people's liberation. This we know. Our liberation as women is never possible under imperialism. We know full well that when poor and working women rise up, the whole world rises up. And in doing so, women lay themselves as the stepping stones of present and future generations of women to continue the work of changing the world. Let us all continue to fight. And I will do a chant, and I will help the Filipino women to help me with this. It means abante, babae, palaban, militante, onward women, courageous and militant. Abante, babae, palaban, militante. Abante, babae, palaban, militante. Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Mehnush. I am a queer activist from Iran. For me, International Women's Day is a day of unity and solidarity between women with various identities. I think by now, we agree that feminism is intersectional. LGBT community has come a long way in Western countries in gaining their human rights. This would not be possible without the help of feminists who oppose all kinds of oppression and discrimination. Iran has become one of the most dangerous places in the world for queer and trans community as a result of institutionalized misogyny, social and state-sponsored homophobia and transphobia, and governance based on Sharia law. Among LGBT members, queer and trans women are affected the hardest, because in addition to homophobia and transphobia, they are faced with gender-based violence, unemployment, compulsory hijab, forced marriages, poverty, and you name it. Just weeks ago, a news from a shelter in Tehran that had refused to take in transgender woman based on her gender identity went viral. However, usually these issues do not become news. In the shadow of strict censorship around queer and trans-related issues, which is enforced through persecution and death threats against LGBT activists by jurisdiction and security forces, many stories of the community, like their harassment by the police, their expulsion from school, sexual victimization, never enter into public sphere inside Iran. The authorities know if we start talking about our stories and lives, change is inevitable. And they cannot accept it. Hence, international forums are the only places available right now where our voices can be heard and circulated, and hopefully something can be done. Today I ask you as individuals, and some of you may be members and representatives of organizations and associations, to be the voice of this extremely marginalized community, especially those who live in regions where homosexual act is punishable with death penalty. I hope one day we could celebrate this day and our achievements like every other woman in the Canada and international. Thank you.
Islamic Republic of Iran!
Islamic Republic of Iran!
As people who identify as women, we have to be united against trans misogyny, against homophobia, and against attacks against people all over the world who are facing trans misogynistic and homophobic violence. We have to stand in solidarity with those around the world whose gender identity is not accepted by fascist regimes. It's just another way for fascist regimes to criminalize people. The people united will never be defeated!
The people united will never be defeated!
We, the women of Sulong UBC, extend our warm and militant greetings to all of you on this International Working Women's Day. We are honored to stand with you today to uphold women's rights, to gender justice and the rights of all people to resist oppression, tyranny, and state fascism. Sulong UBC is an organization dedicated to the struggle for national democracy and a just and lasting peace in the Philippines. As an affiliate of Anak Bayan Canada, we belong to an international anti-imperialist and anti-fascist movement educating, organizing, and mobilizing youth and students to join with the masses of workers and peasants to create genuine social change. In the youth and student sector, as with the national democratic movement as a whole, women have always played an important and decisive role in advancing patriotic and progressive mass movements in the Philippines and indeed the world. Our identity as Filipino women is rooted in the struggle. We remember their history in order to continue their fight. We remember Lorena Barros, a young student activist who founded Makibaka, or the Free Movement of New Women.
We are inspired by Miles Albasin, who re-established Anak Bayan UP Cebu with the understanding that youth must educate and organize themselves beyond the confines of the classroom.
We learn from Regine Beal, Igorot activist with Timpuyo Di Manalon Iti Kalinga, the Kalinga Peasant Association of the Cordillera People's Alliance.
We are enraged and roused to action by the case of the Tacloban or Leyte 5. 5 activists were arrested last month on trumped-up charges just for demanding justice for Typhoon Haiyan victims.
Here in Canada, we are guided by the activism of migrant workers and Philcan youth, who will not stand for the exploitation of Filipino women and Filipino labor. They have fought and continue to fight for their rights to be with their families and have safe working and living environments.
As young Filipinos in the diaspora, we connect our struggles here to our history of resistance and the current issues facing our peoples today. Our presence here on Coast Salish territories is due to imperialism, feudalism, and bureaucrat capitalism, the root causes of poverty, landlessness, and lack of opportunity that push thousands of people, most of whom are women, to leave the country every day. As young women firmly rooted in militant action, we call for all women and our allies to continue fighting for justice on this day and every day. Babae, ang lugar mo ay sa pakikibaka. Women, your place is in the struggle.
Thank you so much, Sulong UBC, for that rousing statement. Our next speaker is Aoife from the International Workers of the World.
Hello everybody, my name is Aoife McCandless-Davis. I am a worker from the service industry, customer service industry. I work in childcare, I've worked in restaurants, and throughout my experience as a working class woman, I have faced sexual harassment in the workplace, transphobic harassment, homophobic harassment, lesbophobic harassment, and because of that, I have turned to workplace organizing to build solidarity with my fellow workers. I'm here today representing the branch of the IWW based in so-called Vancouver. The IWW stands for the Industrial Workers of the World, not to be confused with IWWD. I won't get into how confusing that's been for our members leading up to this. And the Industrial Workers of the World is a member-run union for all workers, and when we say all workers, we mean it. All wage workers, regardless of creed, color, nationality, and most importantly today, gender. Women, and of course racialized people, have been excluded and pushed out of the union movement historically, and the IWW has always fought to keep women at the forefront, to include women in labor struggle where other unions have turned their back. The IWW has been a force in labor struggles throughout its history, but the union's inclusionary policies have embraced the struggles of women and attracted women to the workplace organizing since its founding in 1905. The IWW builds workers' power to collectively address the issues we face in our workplaces, and for women workers and those in highly gendered or precarious workplaces, this ability to organize using direct action on the shop floor is especially important. It can be the difference between danger and safety. It can be the difference between life and death. IWW members have fought for improved conditions for women in such cases as the famous Bread and Roses strike that has been brought up a few times today. Very happy to hear. We have organized sex workers and are currently involved in campaigns to improve working conditions for service industry workers, such as the Ellen Stardust Dinner campaign in New York City, where our members have successfully pressured the boss to win a nursing room for mothers in that restaurant. An industry that has been called for ages an unorganizable industry, restaurants. Campaigns to support women workers need workplace solidarity, and workplace solidarity needs to support women workers. As stated by the Gender Equity Committee of the IWW, patriarchy, misogyny, sexism, and gender and sexual-based violence are diametrically opposed to the elevation of the working class. These social issues are a plague on working people. We are here today for women, to celebrate our wins and reflect on the work we have left to do. We should be asking each other, what are the issues that contemporary working women and non-binary people face? We are here to stand against gender-based violence. And I ask, how are we standing with our non-binary comrades? How are we standing with our Two-Spirit comrades? The settler colonial project of Canada has been committing gendercide across its history and still today against Indigenous genders. And this is necessary to upholding capitalism and patriarchy on this land where it does not belong. The extermination of Two-Spirit people, of women, of life givers, is intimately entwined with our struggle against capitalism and settler colonialism, and we must stand in solidarity with all our two-spirit, trans, and non-binary comrades. The modern narratives around the definition of womanhood and women's work has broadened since the first International Working Women's Day. Many of the struggles we face today are different, but we still have the tools to address them. Agitate, educate, and above all, organize in our workplaces. That's the only way a woman's strike will dismantle the capitalist system that patriarchy thrives on. The slogan of the IWW is that an injury to one is an injury to all. And today I say an injury to one woman is an injury to the entire working class. Thank you.
The workers united will never be defeated.
The workers united will never be defeated.
Our next speaker is Erica Grant from the Nisga'a Nation. Sorry, I'm tiptoeing here. Erica Grant from the Nisga'a Nation. Let's not forget that the land that we're on right now, that all workers are on right now, is stolen and unceded. Erica?
When I was wondering, actually, I seen everybody up here, they wrote out what they were going to talk about. I'm not like that. I'm off the cuff. And when I seen that sign, I was remembering in 1982, I was almost a victim of the Picton brothers. I was one of the ones that got away. I do not, to this day, know who the two women were that helped me get away. And I so appreciate